it's a whole government thing, whether it's the State Department, Commerce, the CIA, the Department of Defense. I mean, everybody is on board with this. I remember the famous cover with Nixon, we're all Keynesians now. I think in America, down to the general public, we're all China hawks now, and for good reason. In the middle of this last decade, they stole all our jobs using things like massive subsidies, intellectual property theft, hacking our computers. Now what they've done to us is basically infect this country with a deadly China virus that's killed over 160,000 Americans, cost us trillions of dollars in our wealth, and really created some headwinds. So we're all China hawks now, Joe.
We're all China hawks now. It's Monday, August the 17th, the year of our Lord 2020, broadcasting live from Capitol Hill. This is War Room, episode 337. I'm Raheem Kassam, joined in studio by Jack Maxey. On Newsmax TV later on in the day, on the America's Voice.news network, on the John Fredericks Radio Network, and blown through the CCP's firewall, subtitled in Mandarin by G News and GTV. You're in the War Room. The hashtag is War Room Pandemic. We want to hear from all of you guys and gals out there over the course of the show and beyond. We pay attention to every single thing. We're very grateful for all your support over the weekend. And as usual, we've got a great guest joining us here now. But first, I want to throw it over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Yeah, Raheem, we got a big show today. We got Senator McSally talking about China debt. We've got David Horowitz talking about his new book, Blitz, but really the revolution that's all over the United States with Antifa, with certain elements of Black Lives Matter, raised its ugly head again over the weekend, I think in day 80. In Portland, we got exclusive footage we're going to talk to a little bit later in the show, and then we're going to have David Horowitz in. A packed show. Raheem's going to give us a complete analysis of the Democrat convention. But as I said yesterday in Maria Bartiromo, the path to victory for President Trump goes right through Beijing, and here's the reason. The CCP lied, and Americans died. The CCP lied, and Chinese people died. The CCP lied, and Australians died. All over the world, you're seeing this outbreak of the new federal state of China, the whistleblower movement. They're adamantly outing the Chinese Communist Party as the totalitarian dictatorship that is controlling China and now trying to spread throughout the world. You know, Peter Navarro, a Uber hawk, laid it all out on CNBC this morning, much to the shock of some of the hosts. We want to bring in, I was honored over the weekend to join a rally digitally out in Pennsylvania, in person there with General Spalding. And General Spalding, who is, I think, the smartest guy in the White House, one of the most brilliant guys in the United States, a B-2 pilot, learned Mandarin in his 40s, former military attaché to Beijing. I might add, General Spalding, that was General Joseph Stilwell's position many, many decades ago. So you have a great lineage that you followed in Vinegar Joe's footsteps. But you're a brilliant strategist, an incredible technologist, and you understand the Chinese Communist Party, I think, better than anybody. Walk us through. You've got this new initiative called the People's War 2020. It's the typical thing Spalding does, which is brilliant. He reconceives how to present something. His book, Stealth War, is a must-read. But I got to tell you, walk us through what the People's War 2020 is. Why are you launching it today? And why is it important for the American people?
Well, you know, Steve, we've got 78 days left, and we've got real issue. And you know, when I was out there yesterday talking with you, I looked in the faces of those people. Look, they understand that China's a problem. What they didn't understand was why and how big. And I think that's what People's War is trying to do. I keep getting asked, what should we do about it? What can I do about it? And it's really, People's War 2020 is a takeoff from Mao's People's War, which is really a war on the people. What People's War 2020 is getting Americans to stand up for their country again, to take back their country. So what we talked about yesterday in rural Pennsylvania, and that's what I'm going to do all over this country, is really taking back our innovation, technology, talent, and capital that's been flowing to China for the last 30 years and reinvesting it in this country. We've had, a good 4 years really fighting off, some decoupling from China. This next 4 years has to be about rebuilding manufacturing, infrastructure, really rebuilding the country. That's what People's War 2020 is about, is getting people to vote for candidates that support many of the policies that the president has instituted.
Steve. I think we may have some kind of technical hitch here. Steve, do you hear us here in the studio?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I can't hear General Spalding. Can we get him back?
Yeah, General, I think the line may be choppy. I think the best thing we may have to do here, Steve, is drop the General and reconnect to him in this segment. So if we can just refresh that line and bring General Spalding back, it's incredibly difficult to hear. Steve, over to you.
Oh, we have to just have him call in.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go through, pull up and let's get on the screen the People's War 2020. Here's why it's so important. People's War is a very symbolic thing for the Chinese Communist Party. President Xi just announced, I think a couple of months ago, that there's a People's War, a new People's War going on. This is where he's trying to galvanize all of the interests of the Chinese Communist Party and their allies throughout the world of an attack, basically economic, technological, on the United States of America as a leader of the Alliance of Liberty. Remember, Raheem and Jack, on the Saturday, we had a very special commemoration of the Independence Day of India. Why? Because India is our central ally with Japan in this great conflict with the Chinese Communist Party, and it was amazing to hear everything that was going on then. That's when we teased the People's War 2020. What Spalding's point is that you can get engaged in every aspect of American life, from healthcare to technology to the economy to national security. The Chinese Communist Party is either infiltrated or has access to, and there's a way you can turn that around. The first thing you have to do is become knowledgeable about this. The first thing you have to do is, understand what the details are. That's why you got Spalding's book, Stealth War, but now he's got a website up that goes through each one of those topics. And Raheem and Jack, why don't you give, before we get General Spalding back on, just give the building blocks of what the site says and how people can get access to it.
I think we have the General back, by the way, Steve, if you want to make the most in this segment.
Yeah, General, can you walk us through what the sections of the site are and why they're important for people to go through there and to get access to it, to understand it?
So first of all, these are policies for the United States that helps rebuild the country, and it's about decoupling from China. It's about rebuilding infrastructure and manufacturing, and it's really about going out in the world and ensuring that our principles and values are the ones that are carrying weight. Right now, what the Chinese are doing is taking our innovation, technology, talent, and capital, and they're wrapping it in their principles and values and exporting it to the world. And it's really about meeting them in the battlefield of ideas and the battlefield of the global economy, where we are losing. We are getting, essentially beaten down by the Chinese Communist Party. And what I want to do is help Americans understand the policies that we need and help elect candidates that will support what the president is trying to do in this country.
So walk through some of those verticals, walk through some of those policies. Let's get people up to speed on what you think are the most important.
So first of all, I think the two major policies in the protect category, so it's protect, rebuild, inspire. In protect, we need to make the tariffs on China permanent. And I think the other one that we need to do is stop exchanging U.S. dollars for Hong Kong dollars. China has two currencies. No country is allowed to have two currencies. And they use the Hong Kong dollar to do billions of dollars of IPOs that our retirement dollars are going into. So it's really about cutting off the Hong Kong dollar and making tariffs permanent in China. That'll force the decoupling. It'll force American corporations out. And then rebuild. What we need to do is take, a lot of the money that we're spending in DOD and rebuild our manufacturing, science and technology, infrastructure, and put a lot of our kids in through STEM education. When I was at the Pentagon or at the White House, we looked at what we could do with 1 year in Afghanistan. We could send 200,000 American kids through STEM degree programs for 4-year programs every year that we're in Afghanistan. In 5 years, we train a million new scientists and engineers. And then finally, in Inspire, it's really about taking USAID, Export-Import Bank, the Trade Development Agency, the Developmental Finance Corporation, and all bringing them under one director for strategic economic development. And what we have today is no strategy for international economic development, and that's we can't compete with what the Chinese are doing, which are essentially taking our innovation, technology, talent, and capital, building out the Belt and Road Initiative, and they're really using that as geopolitical leverage in international institutions. So it's protect, decouple from China, stop, make tariffs permanent, stop exchanging for the Hong Kong dollar, rebuild our infrastructure, manufacturing, and science and technology, and inspire. It's really about using our money abroad strategically and helping economic development in a way that encourages U.S. businesses to get involved.
You say you're bipartisan. You're not tied to any party, and these are policies that put forward to confront and eventually not just decouple, but take down the Chinese Communist Party. Do you see, aren't there actually big elements of the Republican Party that are not on board for this, particularly when you start talking dollar, and you start talking cutting them off from access to capital markets here? Is there anybody in the Democratic Party, and particularly elements of the Republican Party, that agree with any of this? Isn't this really a small minority, or at least some minority of the Republican Party, that are the super hawks here, and you don't really find it in the donor class, and you certainly don't find it in the Democratic Party?
No, and that's exactly right. But you know who does understand these policies? I think Americans, grassroots Americans. You're right. Whether it's the right or the left, a lot of these people, these elites, don't, essentially want to help the president fulfill this effort to rebuild the country, to put the American people, particularly the working class, at the top of the food chain. So they want to keep them down. They want to keep shipping their jobs to China. And quite frankly, that's how they've gotten rich and become so powerful. So it's really about breaking that up. And what I told the people yesterday, I was preaching to the choir, but there's a lot of people across the aisle that would agree with everything that's in this policy. So it's not a Republican policy. It's not a Democrat policy. It's an American policy. It's about the working class. It's restoring their dignity, and primarily it's also restoring the economic and science and technological power of the United States.
You're one of the top technology guys around. You see today Walmart and others are saying, hey, if you shut down WeChat, it's going to affect our business in China. There's all type of blowback from Wall Street on this decoupling. First question, isn't China decoupling from the West technologically with their standards and trying to build their own technological standards? And number two, is there going to be a big economic impact in the United States if we continue on and shut down TikTok, shut down WeChat, shut down Baidu, all of that? What will be the economic impact?
Got 45 seconds here, General.
So what China's trying to do is basically dominate.
Let's see if General Spalding can stay over to the next segment, Raheem, and I want to get the hashtag War Room Pandemic posse in here with questions, observations on General Spalding, also in the live chat. So, Raheem, why don't you take us out? See if General Spalding can stay over to the next one, because I want to finish this question.
General, if you can hang with us, we'd be very grateful for that. Just in a minute or two in the next segment as we wrap up here. Jack Maxey, before we go.
Quick breaking news. Sweden has just banned the use of TikTok by all public service employees just now.
We'll be following up on that breaking news in the next segment here. Well, hold on, Steve. Not so fast. We'll follow up on it. We'll check if it's true. Jack is now the PR agent for Sweden, so we've got to check out on these things. We'll be back. More hashtag War Room
Happily
Pandemic.
so.
Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon, General Spalding return with more War Room Pandemic after the break.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Hey, welcome back to the War Room this Monday, August the 17th. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam here on Capitol Hill. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Yeah, we're talking about a People's War 2020 with General Spalding, one of the uber hawks in America right now, that sees clearly that the path for victory of President Trump goes right through Beijing, but really the path for the Chinese people and the American people go through confronting the Chinese Communist Party. Look, we're going to get into David Horowitz later today, Senator McSally talking about Chinese debt. We've got the whole Portland episode. We got exclusive footage. Your head will blow up on what the anarchists are out there doing. It's very simple. In turbulent times, Entrepreneurs are going to lead us through this to rebuild this economy. And if you're an entrepreneur, you need NetSuite by Oracle. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon today to get your 7 action steps for these turbulent times. Remember, if your company's $1 million to $100 million, you need NetSuite by Oracle. Raheem, let's bring General Spalding back in. So, General Spalding, the question is, there's a huge controversy now, and all the tech companies are out there saying, oh, we're going to get so hurt if you shut down WeChat, if you shut down Baidu, if you shut down TikTok. It's going to have major implications. The CCP already decided to decouple from the West back in the spring of 2019. They're trying to implement that program. What don't our technology companies get about this, General Spalding? Why are they not supporting the president when he wants to start banning these technologies that are doing nothing more than making the Chinese Communist Party the Saudi Arabia of data, which is what they want to be? They understand conflict, war, and economics in the 21st century are going to be controlled by data and those that can manipulate it. What don't the tech companies get about that, sir?
Well, they're co-opted by the Chinese. What they have is research, AI research centers in China, because you can get access to all kinds of data. They can't get access to that kind of data here in the United States. So they're over there trying to boost their algorithms. The problem is Baidu, which is Google, Alibaba, which is Amazon, and Tencent, which is Facebook, wants to dominate because the Chinese Communist Party sees artificial intelligence and data as the strategic resource of the future. They want to dominate not only the global economy, but those same algorithms that get you to buy shoes can get you to choose your politics. The whole thing is about control, and they see what Silicon Valley built. They couldn't beat Apple and Google, so they wanted to build another platform, and that's the platform. It's not the smartphone platform. It's the smart city platform. So they collect data about you, and they use that data to power their companies, and they use it to power their society and to control their society.
General, what do we need to do to make it a higher priority to tear down the firewall? If we tear down the Great Firewall that enslaves the Chinese people, won't American companies be the immediate beneficiaries, not the ones that the Ciscos and the Microsofts that basically have made the digital gulag that the poor citizens of China have to live behind so that they're oppressed by the Chinese Communist Party? But if that firewall comes down, I am told by everybody in the whistleblower movement, New Federal State, and all these organizations I deal with, the Rule of Law Society, Rule of Law Foundation, all the Chinese on the mainland tell me that immediately they will start using Western companies and Western technology because they don't trust the Chinese companies. The Chinese companies are basically controlled and owned by the CCP, and they're active participants in their enslavement. So why are we not making a higher priority to tear down the great technology firewall of the Chinese Communist Party?
It's because most of D.C. doesn't understand Silicon Valley, doesn't understand the tech industry, doesn't understand its power over data. And quite frankly, the most important thing the administration has done is banning WeChat, because WeChat is the way that the Chinese Communist Party controls Chinese outside the Great Firewall. Because they can't get on any other social media inside China, there's over 1 billion people on WeChat. So when they come to the United States, they're still on WeChat, which means the Chinese Communist Party can continue to censor them. So getting them off, getting WeChat out of America means that when the Chinese people come over to the United States, they're going to have to get on social media that's not from China, and they're going to have a different, ability to interact with Americans and other democratic countries.
General Spalding, I'm the chairman of the Rule of Law Society, also on the Committee on the Present Danger, other things with you. The whistleblower movement is pushing democracy and rule of law for China. It's kind of embarrassing when we see a situation like in Portland that is obviously out of control now with anarchists and cultural Marxists. Before you go, I know you got some thoughts on the Portland situation. Can you share them with us? And if we can start playing some of that exclusive footage we've gotten from our embed over the weekend. I think the embed's going to be with us tomorrow. He's been up for 48 hours getting this footage. But I'd like to hear, before we go to the studio, is hear General Spalding's observation on this ongoing anarchy in its 80th day in a great American city, Portland, Oregon.
Well, it started with the coronavirus. So 40% of the social media posts were from bots for the coronavirus. The same thing is going on with the looting and rioting. Now, there may be direct sponsorship of the folks like Antifa and BLM that are creating the violence. But most importantly, what they're trying to do is add fuel to the fire. In other words, if they can boost through social media the attendance here, they think that they can create and really, have mass riots around the United States. That's their goal, and it's not their own. It's not just them. Also, the Russians, the Iranians, perhaps the North Koreans are involved in it. So it's really these authoritarian regimes led by China that are using, our social disruption and trying to fuel the breakup of the United States.
General Spalding, one more time, how do people get access to the People's War 2020?
So go to my site, generalspalding.com, sign up. You'll get the first chapter of Stealth War free. We'll send you out People's War. We're going to get it up online eventually where everybody can click on it, and they can follow me on Twitter at Robert_Spalding.
Okay, General, we're going to be pushing it hard today. Get it up on our other affiliated websites. General Robert Spalding, thank you very much, sir. Great patriot.
Steve, we have
Raheem, Jack.
I have a little.
Raheem, Jack,
we have a little Sweden correction.
Jack.
We have a little Sweden correction.
I have to clarify on the Sweden. My Google translation was not what it should have been.
I knew it.
It's not the entire country's employees, but it is the employees of the state-owned media and all of their associated things, which to me I think is probably a good sign if the equivalent of Swedish BBC is banning their employees from using it. From what they're saying is it looks like this is the first step in a path towards removing it.
Right. That's good news.
Look, if the government's telling the BBC they got to do it, it's serious. Raheem, let's go into Portland and talk about the social media aspect of this and what we're seeing, what we know. Our embed's going to be on tomorrow to discuss. Some of the footage we have is absolutely incredible. And what's stunning to me, Raheem and Jack, is that the mainstream media has really walked away from this one, right? We're in the 80th days. And look, Portland, Oregon is one of the most liberal, progressive cities in the United States. It doesn't make a difference. It's a major city in the United States of America. You cannot let it just be taken over by anarchists and by Marxists. And that, to me, is exactly what's happened here. The downtown area, particularly around the federal courthouse, which is symbolic for the rule of law, is being attacked virtually every night now, right? And local authorities are overwhelmed. They obviously can't control this. Guys, let's talk about the footage and what's going on, Raheem.
Yeah, I just want to hit on something General Spalding mentioned there as well, and it sort of ties into a lot of what's taking place over this summer in advance of an election. I think the people have to understand that there are no coincidences here, and everything is dovetailing. It's just happening quite slowly, and you'll see it come together more and more. It's the same thing as the mail-in voting. It's the same thing as Russiagate, as the election integrity project, as we've discussed. Right now, we're seeing thousands upon thousands upon thousands, way more than average, fake IDs and all this stuff being shipped into this country right now, into places like Chicago, places that are wrought with violence. And you're seeing weapons parts being shipped into the country as well. All this from China. We had 53,000 weapons parts being shipped in. The customs agency calling that an unusual amount of fraudulent activity there. And General Spalding's absolutely right. A lot of this stuff is coming together, and you're seeing these different actors taking it upon themselves to foment civil unrest and foment, perhaps even worse, in the United States post the election. I want to bring it back to Portland with that in mind. Dozens arrested again over the course of this weekend in Portland, in Seattle, in Chicago, and beyond. A riot declared on Saturday night there in Portland again, outside of the federal courthouse. And rocks, they say, softball-sized rocks, glass bottles, etc., thrown at officers. But Jack, the federal agents are still in the courthouse, but are not coming out of the courthouse and confronting these people like we saw 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where actually the situation, I won't want to call it under control, but it was certainly more under control than this.
Well, and also there's some indication that the state police left out of frustration with the fact that they were arresting people and they were being immediately released. So Portland has some problems that go beyond whether or not those federal agents are going to come out. They're losing the support of the state police. They're losing the support, I believe, of most people around there. I talked to a friend in Seattle, quite liberal person, over the weekend, And he said, "Oh man, I got to get out of here. I got to move out of this city." And you start to ask him, "What are you going to do? Take those values with you to Idaho and Colorado?" This is part of the problem. They destroy a place and then they move on. They're like locusts.
And the latest, Steve, we've got about a minute to break here, so I just want to bring the latest as well that was breaking this morning as we were preparing for this show. A man seriously injured late Sunday when protesters beat him after he crashed his truck on a downtown sidewalk. Protesters had reportedly accused the man of trying to hit them with his vehicle, but bringing him out of the truck and kicking him unconscious there. A latest story out of Portland. We do have to go to a quick break now, Steve. When we come back, we do more of this, and I suppose we'll have to tackle head on the Democratic National Convention, which begins sort of virtually today with Billie Eilish and John Legend and the Chicks, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks. We'll talk about that and more. Hashtag War and Pandemic after this break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Jack Maxey and Raheem Kassam, can't pronounce my own name, here on Capitol Hill. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
You know, Japan just announced last night, I think, the greatest drop in their gross domestic product since World War II. You see this tech war we had in the first segment with General Spalding about the decoupling of China and the Chinese Communist Party from all the technology in the West. This is going to have massive economic implications for decades to come. Now, in this turbulent time, who's going to lead us through this? You know who's going to do it? The vanguard, that's going to be entrepreneurs. If you have a company from 1 million to 100 million, you need NetSuite by Oracle. It's a software package that pulls everything together. Human resources, your projections, your capital asset pricing model, all of it. If you're a company, once again, from 1 million to 100 million, you need this tool. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, to get your 7 action steps every entrepreneur should be taking, and also a site tour. Do it today. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to take a look at this product. Raheem, in this segment, next segment, we're going to start talking about Democratic Convention, but we got to go back to this footage in Portland. We've got exclusive footage. We'll have our embed in tomorrow to give us some more details about it. But it looks like a city on fire. In addition, there was other footage taken of a truck driver, somebody driving a van or a truck that was brutally beaten last night, kicked in the head. Raheem, I want to put the footage up for the Newsmax and the AVN audience, but for the John Fredericks Radio Network, I want you and Jack to describe exactly what's going on, because you see what these peaceful protesters are really like.
Right, and you can see here on your screens, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to just play this on repeat a couple of times so that you see exactly what's going on here. Maybe we can even drop the bug at the bottom, because I think it's covering a little bit on the screen right there. But so you have a man, he's sat on the road. Now, he was driving a van, he was driving a truck, he was sitting on the side of the road. After a confrontation had already occurred is when this footage starts rolling. A confrontation's already occurred. He's already been at it with protesters. Now he's sitting in the road. He's on his phone, or he's doing something. He's just by himself. And you can see out of nowhere, somebody runs up behind this guy, behind this man, and from behind kicks him across the head, across the side of the head, a full, as far as I can tell from the video, it's pretty clear, a full powered kick to the side of the head, and boom, the guy's flat out, all captured on camera. Then several people, we can't play the audio on this because there's too many swear words, it wouldn't even be worth playing, it will all just be bleeps. But at this point, people are running over, they have him, they drag him to the side of the road, and they're trying to revive him, they're trying to resuscitate him. He is unconscious at this point. They're putting flashlights on his eyes. They're putting, I think it looked like there was a water bottle there. Maybe they're trying to get him some water. But this was a full-powered kick, Steve, to the side of the head from behind of somebody who was just sitting there on the pavement. Now, look, it may have been. And we're still looking at news reports. The Washington Post has this. The Associated Press has this. And not many people have a great amount of detail of what came before this altercation. But the crowd themselves, you can see themselves, are shocked at the actions of one of the people in amongst them who goes up behind this man, we're showing it on the screen again for you guys here, and kicks him in the side of the head, rendering him completely unconscious, Jack.
Well, the good news is, if there can be said to be any good news, is that the viewers who've been watching this, apparently the group on 4chan went out, decided as their little army of patriots, decided to identify this guy. They have identified this guy. Very likely he will be arrested soon. But this kind of chaos has to stop, and I think the American people watching this begin to realize that this no longer has anything to do with a Black Lives Matter protest. This is pure, unadulterated terrorism in the streets of America.
Look, Steve, we don't know what happened.
This is what
we don't know we don't know what happened before this, right? And I don't want to speculate about what happened before. There's the allegation that this guy was trying to drive his truck into some protesters. Okay, we'll figure all of that out in the wash. But the point is, at this point in the video, the man posed no threat. He was sitting on the road by himself, staring down at the ground, surrounded by people, and somebody comes up to him and kicks him in the side of the head.
From behind.
From behind.
Yeah, you're going to find out. It doesn't matter what happened before. It looked like he got in a tangle that they were already on him. So here's the cut to the chase. The Democratic Party owns this, okay? They own this. They're in back of these protests. They're in back. Now, it's gotten out of control, and they want to walk away from it. So in the group hug you're going to see in the next couple of days on national TV as they do their convention, they're going to try to distance themselves from all this. But this is exactly what they represent. This is exactly what they've unleashed on America. And to me, it's incumbent upon President Trump. Where are the federal officers and the federal agents? And more importantly, where is Bill Barr in the Justice Department? Where are the U.S. attorneys? How come there's not? Why is the guy that kicked him in the head even on the streets? Why have these people been rounded up and arrested? And using RICO and using crossing interstate lines for conspiracy to riot. Why are these guys not being held right now in jails, awaiting trial, and then put in prisons for 10 years? That's where these people need to go. They need to go to prison. It's one thing to have a peaceful protest, protesting with your constitutional rights about the murder of Mr. Floyd. It's another thing of what's going on in Portland. It has nothing to do with that. Okay? I think they were chanting, I saw on one of the sites the other night, they were chanting, "Save a life, kill a cop." And so this is the type of anarchy, this is the type of danger. And to me, it's incumbent upon the president right now to get his Justice Department, start arresting people, start booking people on charges of crossing interstate lines to conspiracy to riot. We need these people put away, and we need them put away now. Not tomorrow, today. The guy should have never been kicked in the head. That guy already should have been in jail. I'm sure he's done dozens of other things. The first thing he doesn't do is go attempted murder by kicking somebody in the head, in the back of the head. So these people should be rounded up, and I think it's an outrage that this to allow the progressive mayor and the city council to control this, and having a great city like Portland there with innocent people that are being terrorized, and that's what they are. And this week, Raheem, as you go through this Democratic convention, all they're going to do is talk about the peaceful protests. Well, the peaceful protests are fine. There's no problem with that. But this is not peaceful protest. These are anarchists and Marxists that are trying to take down a great American city.
Yeah, I think that's right, Stephen. And we can get into the convention here if you like.
Yeah, let's go ahead. I want to walk through the nights first.
Yeah.
I want to walk through who's actually going to be showcased and what points they're going to try to get across. What they're trying to drive this message that this is an election about Trump. But what are they going to be put forward? This is what I said yesterday on Maria. To me, the best thing the RNC and the campaign can do is every night go to their policies. Go to the policies and see exactly what these people represent, exactly what they're putting forward. And part of what they're putting forward is Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, so this is obviously a much different convention than we would usually see. And all day long, you have the caucus meetings and the sort of side rooms and the breakouts and all that. So, for instance, today, starting from noon, you'll have the Hispanic caucus meeting and the Labor Council meeting and the Black caucus meeting and the Ethnic Council meeting, the Youth Council meeting and the Women's caucus meeting. You then have the real convention program kicking off at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so prime time time, sort of in the across the time zones, in order that all these speakers can get the best run of news coverage. So tonight we start off. And there are a couple of big speakers every night, the ones that I'm interested in, and there's a bunch of smaller ones scattered around. So what I consider slightly smaller ones is like Amy Klobuchar and Gretchen Whitmer, that kind of thing. But the big ones I'm looking at tonight are Governor Cuomo, Bernie Sanders, and former First Lady Michelle Obama tonight. Tomorrow, the big names: Chuck Schumer, AOC, Bill Clinton, and Jill Biden. On Wednesday, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi. And here's an interesting one, Steve. Usually they save the top billing speaker as the last of the evening. On Wednesday evening, Kamala Harris is not. That's the vice presidential pick is not the top of the billing. That's saved for former President Barack Obama on Wednesday night. Kamala Harris as the warm-up to the former president. And then Thursday, interestingly enough, they're not distracting very much from Joe Biden on Thursday. You have a warm-up acts including Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang right before Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden himself. That's the run of play. But as you say, Steve, some of the information that we're looking at here, and I got through this Politico article actually because it was very well done. I think it went up early this morning, 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. But it actually walks the audience through relatively well the latest polling. And while they have to have some caveats in there about how Biden's still doing remarkably well, etc., it does repeatedly state that the race is tightening from earlier in the summer, that the enthusiasm gap is very different between the Trump supporters and the Biden supporters, and that the Biden supporters are primarily concerned not with electing Joe Biden, but with unelecting President Donald J. Trump. And some of the things in here are fascinating to me because what it proves is that Biden supporters will actually be easier for the other side to suppress or convince the other way, or perhaps convince them to stay home. You don't want to support that ticket. Maybe you don't want to support the Republican ticket, but you don't want to support Biden either. And interestingly, you see that there isn't all good news for the president, no matter this Politico article showing us that the race is tightening in the president's favor, or rather, he's doing better against Biden than he was doing a couple of months ago. But it also does show us that the president is struggling with voters 65 and older. He won that by 7 points, according to the 2016 National Election Pool exit poll. Trump beat Clinton among seniors by 7 points. And that raises the question, is the president doing enough on the things that older people, older voters care about? Is there enough going on in terms of law and order? Is there enough going on in terms of prescribing Antifa? Is there enough going on in terms of healthcare? And you're seeing this battle of big pharma taking place on the news networks every night in the ad breaks. One pro ad for President Trump tackling Big Pharma, another Big Pharma ad tackling President Trump for his actions. So I think there's all of that. And one of the things that I'm interested in, Stephen, I know you got pushback on this, and you will remember this far better than I do because I wasn't even in this country when this happened. But Kamala Harris doesn't seem to have added much to the Biden ticket. She's barely in the positive section in terms of approval ratings and in terms of how many people think that she is going to be qualified to take over as president. 54% saying that to a CBS YouGov poll. 54% saying that Kamala Harris will be qualified to take over as president. And what stood out to me is that 60% of Americans back then approved of John McCain's choice of Sarah Palin, and Kamala Harris is about 6 points behind Palin on that, Steve. Got about a minute left here.
Well, when that was Governor Palin, that's when it started off. It didn't end at 60%. That faded, and I'm a huge Sarah Palin fan. But I want to go back to about why I think this race is tightening. It's action, action, action. The president's the protagonist in this drama. And if you start driving the action, as he's driven the action, I think over the last couple of weeks, I think American people are going to reassess this and weigh and measure it. Remember, Joe Biden really hasn't put on much of a campaign at all. He's been down in the basement. Every now and again, Jill, his wife, goes down, puts the bib on him, and they do the Proof of Life podcast. But other than that, he goes maybe to an empty room up in Scranton and gives a speech or gives a few remarks for a few minutes. No, I think that's why it's so important to walk through the policies, to walk through exactly what if it's supposed to be an alternative, what actually the alternative is on the economic side, what the alternative is on national security. Just go across the board.
Right.
One of the most interesting things I think from tonight is going to be John Kasich.
Well, Steve, let's get into that in the next segment here. John Kasich, the other congressman that was being trailed last night as well, former Republican. We'll talk about that and why Republicans need a strong Trump in this election.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The interesting news, I won't call it the bad news, is that it seems like the Chinese Communist Party has forged a coalition with the Democratic Party. And the mission now is to get Donald Trump out of office. The Chinese obviously want him out because he's really tough on them. The Democratic Party obviously wants to take over the reins of power. But
there's Peter Navarro there. Powerful,
Wow.
strong words, Steve.
Wow. You know, I think there's a lot of truth to this. The Chinese Communist Party, the DNI has said, Director of National Intelligence says Iran and China and their allies, we've been saying this for years, people laughed at it, but they have now a 25-year, $400 billion deal as allies. China and Iran, as reported by the DNI, are very strongly want to get Trump out of office, and are going to try to influence this election. So that's a big throwdown from Peter Navarro, the trade and manufacturing assistant to the President of the United States, and really the tip of the spear when it comes to everything about taking on China and taking on its economic policy. So, Raheem, Jack, that was pretty bold. One thing I want to talk about before we get back into the convention is who's talking tonight, and that's John Kasich. I called him a quisling yesterday on Maria Bartiromo, and he is a quisling. He's a traitor. He's a traitor to his party. He's a traitor to the people that have backed him for years. I'd like to know what policies, at the federal judiciary, and also what policies economically, what policies on national security, what policies the Democratic Party support that he has fought for supposedly for so many years. I think Kasich, guys, is exposing himself as the globalist he's always been, the happy talk globalist. And a lot of these rats are now coming out, but I think it's outrageous. And I put this on his supporters. All those people in Ohio, all those good folks in Ohio that supported this loser for decades in Congress and as a governor, and now you see him in his full color. He's going to come on national TV tonight and rip President Trump apart and say that President Trump, he's one of these guys triggered by Trump because, Trump crushed his very weak attempt to try to be president. Can you imagine John Kasich as president of the United States? I mean, it'd be like Alfred E. Newman being president of the United States. It's a complete joke. But his bitterness to Trump and all these never-Trumpers is now you're going to see on living color tonight. John Kasich go after the president of the United States. Guys, love to hear your thoughts on that.
One of the things that I think is so interesting about this, Steve, is that you've got Ocasio-Cortez is going to be speaking tomorrow, and they've given her only 60 seconds to make her point in a pre-recorded speech. So over the weekend, a lot of progressive Democrats have created a petition requesting that Ocasio-Cortez get at least as much time as John Kasich. And what I think this shows is you're just seeing this division occur inside the Democratic Party. They're trying to assuage both wings of their party, right? They're trying to bring Kasich in to seem as if they're moderate and can draw in some Republicans. But to me, I'm more interested by the people who seem to be blocked out of speaking at the convention, like Ocasio-Cortez or maybe some other members of the squad. Over the weekend, you had Tlaib say that she's not even going to go on the record as supporting Joe Biden, and she rejected the Democratic platform because it doesn't provide for total free health care. So I think we're seeing in this Democratic convention an attempt to kind of define the dance card, and it doesn't look like they're really going to be making their party feel as if they're included, particularly many aspects of the progressive left.
Raheem, your thoughts?
Well, Steve, the interesting thing to me is you mentioned John Kasich there, and you would think that would be somewhat of a coup. At least the media has been treating it as a coup for the Democrats to have a Republican, a so-called Republican, up there this evening. But there's very little mention of John Kasich on their website. As I said, I went through all of those and talked about, you got Cuomo and Bernie and all these guys, and Michelle Obama up tonight as well. But you've got to go into a sub thing on the DNC website. You got to click through a sub thing, and then it comes up in very small print after everyone else's names, Governor John Kasich. So do they realize this isn't something to crow about?
Well, listen, I think it's back to Jack's point. Remember, what they're trying to do is carve off that little bit of never Trumper, 3 to 5% of traditional, globalist Republicans. They don't vote for President Trump. But
right.
I think that the problem they've got is that they're trying to cover up the radical nature of where these policies are. That's why I said the other day on Maria, I think the RNC and the Trump organization, the thing they should do is forget the personalities, put forward the policies that they're talking about. The policies are so radical. This is not your father or your grandfather's Democratic Party. This is a radicalized, on a policy perspective, it's completely radicalized. Open borders, sanctuary cities, really kowtowing to China, not standing up to Iran, massive $4 trillion tax increase right out of the box. It's and remember, they're always, at the end of the day, they're the party responsible for the greatest concentration of wealth ever in the history of the country from the years 2008 to 2016, the Obama administration with Joe Biden in it, cheerleading all those policies that concentrated wealth into the 1%. That's all. That whole thing was a creation of the bailouts that the Democrats came up with to take care of the financial crisis of 2008. And so I think it's these radical policies. I think what Jack put his finger on it. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Have Kasich talk to that small group of never Trumpers that just hate the president. At the same time, not allow, don't have any more time for the AOCs and the more radical wing of their party.
Can we also make very clear that the Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks as they're now known, are playing at the convention? And so they're having a band perform that made their money and made their name by using the word Dixie? That doesn't sound very PC to me.
Well, they're perfect entertainment for the Democratic Party, because just like the Dixie Chicks, the Democratic Party tries to obscure their past as well concerning that exact same subject. One other thing, Steve, that I think we got to talk about is you got Bernie Sanders showing up to speak. I really am interested to see what kind of appeal Bernie makes to his supporters, because as we know, he was clearly the second favorite. And many of his supporters have not necessarily followed his lead and come out in total support of Joe Biden. So I'm going to be trying to pay attention to how Sanders appeals to his base, who certainly do not seem to be completely convinced, and maybe less so after the choice of Kamala Harris was a seeming rejection of the traditional black female candidate they thought they were going to get.
Yeah, we're in for a fun week here, Steve, watching this convention every night and following along closely so that the audience at home doesn't have to if they don't want to, and I don't recommend it. But we'll bring you the top lines out of DNC convention. No matter how crazy they'll be, War Room Pandemic is here for you, and we'll be here for you after this short break. Don't go anywhere.